Hello and welcome to another episode of the CollabTalk podcast, a show dedicated to exploring how we collaborate, whether one-on-one, within small teams, and across entire organizations. And I love these conversations with experts diving into real-world stories, practical insights about what makes collaboration work or fail and how to improve it. My guest today is a repeat entrepreneur and the CEO of NineTwoThree AI Studios based in the Boston area, Andrew Amann.
Thanks for
Hey,
having me.
yeah, hey, it's great to have you. And I know this is as we were chatting up, I mean, there's so much change that's happening so fast. A lot of it, everybody seems to have, interesting announcements coming out in this space. But as I was telling you, is like the one question that persists. I was at this conference in Seattle like 3 weeks ago, and people are saying, it's like, yeah, but ROI. How do we actually get ROI? Are there companies getting that kind of value? Like a lot of promises being made. There's a lot of hype, a lot of marketing, and how much is real. So I think today's topic of proving business value through practical AI is a great topic. So welcome, Andrew. Why don't you introduce yourself, your company, what you guys do, and then we'll jump into it.
Sure. So we're 923 AI Studio. We've been around this will be our 14th year in business. We've been doing AI since 2016. So in 2016, we transitioned from web and mobile apps, and a smaller percentage of our team was building machine learning products back then. And then in 2021, we got a hold of ChatGPT. Before it was ChatGPT, it was called something else. And we launched a ChatGPT product to mental health, to help with mental health. It was a website that basically was trying to figure out how people would navigate through the website and ask front-facing questions to figure out what diagnosis they have or like what path they needed to be on. And so this chatbot that we created using OpenAI, which was pretty much unknown at the time, routed people in the right direction. And so that from there, we've been building products. We have about 25 active products at any time. We have 12 pods, which are teams that work on a specific large project. We have some retained teams and maintenance and service projects, which makes up the other half of those projects to get us to 25. But at any given time, we'll be building a massive project. We just came off of building Chuck GPT, which is Charles Barkley's AI imitator. If you've seen commercials in the NBA finals or the playoffs.
Haven't seen it, but just you telling me that, I want that.
Yeah, it was awesome. So you could chat with Charles, have a conversation with him about anything, about how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And we built the language model behind it, the voice model. And if you saw the commercials, the voice model there as well. And so the combination of building for these massive enterprise brands that come to us, I would say about 90% of them, Charles was a fun project, but 90% of them are looking for workflow automations. So to dovetail to your intro, we have about 80% of our projects that have returned the investment in the last 2 years. So of those 12 to 13 projects that we're working on at any time, 10 of them are making back the technology investment that they put in. And our product managers are teaching the teams how to use AI properly to elevate either revenues or decrease costs. And in doing so, we're seeing some returns. Like we had a 6-figure investment return 8 figures of new revenue. And that was on the day that it launched. So I know there's a lot in the news. I know that a lot of the frontier models are touting the AGI wave is coming. But if you break down the models and you really use engineering best practices and focus on how those models can actually help workflows and automation and teammates do work more efficiently, you can really make some great strides. And we're proof of that for the last 3 years now.
Do you see any trends in certain like industries, types of companies, the types of projects that you're doing? Or is it just all over the place?
Yeah. So the massive trend that kind of hurt us at the beginning of this year was when large language models first started getting into enterprises. You'll remember the days where chatbots started appearing anywhere and you could purchase a cruise for $1. And our
I was helping build a chatbot in 2005, and it was like there was no intelligence to it. It was this massive, FAQ resource, and it was like a call center. We were trying to automate as best we could, but it was basically like a call tree as they go through and find it and get answers and serve up. It wasn't what we have now. But I mean, we referred to it as we were building out the chatbot for that to bring back those answers. So that kind of stuff has been around, those concepts, for a long time.
Yeah. So keyword matching has been around for a long time. Semantic matching, which is what the new large language models have been able to enhance with chatbots, has really been around since 21, 22. And I think what happened in that wave is companies that had a lot of big pockets, but also a lot of innovation labs, were able to spend the $300,000 to build a chatbot that had guardrails that could be supportive. And we have a content team now. We did not build I think it was Chrysler Dodge chatbot, but our content team was able to purchase a Dodge truck for $1. And actually, I'm sorry, it was a Chevy truck, so it was the Chevy dealership. And so those chatbots had a lot of flaws. And I think CEOs noticed quickly that you can't just plug ChatGPT in and make sure it stays on brand. If you're a Coca-Cola chatbot, you can never mention anything about Pepsi. So when we got a hold of that, our first massive project was for Consumer Reports. We built their large language model. We built on top of OpenAI, a modification of a large language model to enhance their internal repository of 90 years of data about their products that they've reviewed over those years. And so if you ask the bot about a stroller or a car, the bot cannot return what Wirecutter said. It has to return what Consumer Reports said. And so we created a router and an orchestration agent to do exactly that. And it was ahead of its time. It is now more common practice. It's a little bit more advanced than a RAG, but it's more common practice now that you see these internal knowledge bases being utilized for specific answers. And I like to say that the world has shifted, and the trend that has happened is people are realizing that deterministic data is deterministic. You can't alter the price of an invoice once it's been entered into the system. And so with these stochastic large language models, they're predicting the unknown. They're predicting the next best word, which also means if you give it enough information in the context window, it might forget or hallucinate or mess up the deterministic answers that you need. And just like any horrible employee we've had in companies that we've worked in, it's impossible to work with that person. And so AI had this like wave of success. And then agencies like us built some great models like we did for Consumer Reports. And it didn't hit the mainstream news, but the ones that did are the people that purchased the cruise for $1 or the truck for the dollar. And it pushed us, like we had a really tough beginning of the year because a lot of people were hesitant on jumping back into AI because of all the problems that it was having.
Yeah.
And Chatbot was at the forefront of that. What I think happened and saved us was this move into agents. And
Yeah.
so I would say starting in about April, May of this year, this large talk about how agents can be autonomous started taking over the internet. And I think with the release of one of OpenAI's model, there was a vast movement towards agents and MCP servers. Now, with us touting that to our clients, we were able to capitalize on the combination of both of them. We're able to now say deterministically, we can build a system that's going to reference your data, but we can semantically talk to that with natural language and ask questions. And some of my favorite clients right now is we have one that's doing shipping paths all over the United States. So we've all used this company. They're UPS or FedEx based, and they're controlling the shipping routes of products going all over the country. Well, if a hurricane happens in Florida, you need to change your shipping routes. So instead of us guessing at what the packages can do, the large language model writes SQL queries to query the database, pull out the correct answer, and return that answer back to the large language model to have that and continue that conversation. But us as the engineers, we get to QA that, engineer that, test that. And so I think the combination with agents that can do tasks, go out and complete a mission and find information and return it back, that is very important. But knowing that that answer is correct and accurate is the thing that is happening right now that people are finally trusting the systems with. So
Yeah.
I think that's the trend and wave that we're seeing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're right. I mean, with clients that I've worked with, where we started to go and look at the automation, there's the where they have those concerns. They say, well, if no, for this question, if I mean, like Microsoft with their model, I mean, I would tell as I train customers going through and doing Copilot training, for example, and would talk about well your concerns, but yes, but if you're sourcing those, so with the content that you have in SharePoint in this location, it can only draw from those resources that you've already validated. Like that's it. And also I think it's important and train the model to say when it doesn't have the answer to say I don't know,
That's
or
exactly right.
routes that could be an automatic feedback loop back to engineering, to marketing, to whoever to answer that question
That's exactly
that
right.
doesn't have the answer there. But I think it's fantastic. The other thing you brought up earlier too is this idea too that you'll have, I don't know what the phrasing is for it, maybe but so you have solutions that don't just work with and draw upon a single model, a single LLM behind there, but it will go depending on the type of question, the problem that it's faced with, to multiple systems.
Yep.
agents, of course, will go to the data sources, and agents kind of do that. So you can ask a question, and I used to think of it like an agent knows when it knows what it doesn't know, but it knows the other agents to go ask
Yes.
to answer that question. Like that model, I mean, what is that called? I mean, is it just a multi-agent model? Is it multi?
Yeah, it's a multi-agent model. It's also agent orchestration is what we call it internally. What
Okay.
happens a lot is I always like to paint the picture of a triangle. We have the ability to control cost, latency, and accuracy. And that triangle can be rotated in any direction. If you want to increase accuracy, you're going to decrease latency and
Mhm.
probably increase cost. If you want to decrease cost, you're going to increase latency, right? So that combination of factors is something we can control. Now, ChatGPT 3.5 is a great model to ask the weather, how you doing, like what is the next step of this process that you can just summarize this paragraph. And it's very, very cheap and it's very fast. And so when you're asking specific questions or you're working down an FAQ list, there's also questions that have been asked before that you can pull from your determinist, like your results that have happened in the past. So you can actually store data onto the system and then route it to a known answer and return that same answer so that you're not even using the large language model. And then you can like put analytics behind how much answers are being asked and which ones are being returned from the system instead of the large language model. So all of this routing happens, but it's very important for the customer to understand that you can plug in, OpenAI, you can plug in Gemini, you can plug in Llama, you can plug in all those because it's just prompting at that point. And there are some fiddling that you need to do to make it shift between one large language model to the other. But for the most part, it creates a agnostic system. Like you don't have to worry on one source. You don't have to worry about one infrastructure. And any engineer that comes into the system now can understand how it's managed, but they can QA it. And I think the QAing aspect of results is what's missing a lot in the systems we see from other companies, or when we get into something, we ask, like, yeah, it's great that ChatGPT is working, but who's checking the answers and determining that they're right or wrong? Or
Right.
passing it to a human, like you said before, which is what we do a lot too. 10% of it is always started by a human and 10% of it is ended by a human. 80% of it should be done by the AI in the middle.
Right.
And so like those concepts are how we consider cost, accuracy, and latency. And controlling those is what clients come to us for.
Are there when you're working with clients? I'm kind of two parts to this question here. I mean, are there? You go in? Do they have a well-formed idea of what they want to automate? But then you have to go in and kind of assess. Is there still that kind of assessment that's part of the design discovery process to figure out? Do you have recommendations back to the client saying like, no, that's not the right area? I mean, how much is that consultative work are you having to do? Or are people coming to you with kind of a like, no, we have a solid idea, this is what we want done, and you get started?
Yeah. So clients have gone through the wave of AI with us as well. And there's really two approaches that people have when they're thinking of a project. And one is they know the KPI they're searching. They've been asked by their CEO or some manager to say, look, can we reduce costs here? And they've determined that AI is a way to reduce costs. So they call us, right? They're doing a Google search and they land on our page. But I think the more prevalent one is someone has a workflow that is frustrating and they understand that AI is very good at doing that task. And when you come across that person, it's a better phone call, it's a better approach, and it's
Mhm.
also a better solution because they're not looking to replace something and they haven't been told go use AI to solve this problem. Because AI is not always the tool necessary for the job. It sometimes is, and it's even better when it's not because software can be deterministic, and it's better if you can solve it with an OCR text recognition that has 99.9% accuracy. Why do I need to have an LLM read a page when OCR does just fine?
Right.
Right? Or like take a picture, convert it to LLM. But
Yep.
my point is still when somebody comes to us as the approach of, I have a thing in my business that I've been told or I've read can be reduced if we use these internet things, and AI being one of them.
Mhm.
And so now they're interested, they're curious. And we can say, yeah, we did this project over here that's similar to this project. And we can show the relationships. And that allows them to get trust and understand that we're going to take care of that KPI that they're chasing. And we also can set that KPI in stone and try to wait 3 months, figure out if we solved it, and then look at the results. If we hit the results, great, we all win. If we miss those results, there's something wrong in the architecture or the planning or the road mapping that we did at the beginning that allowed us to miss that, or not allowed us, but like discouraged us from missing that. I think that is the approach that people should have, is when you look at a workflow across your organization, find places where data is being passed from one person to another and data entry is happening, or find a place where summarization or research of gathering a bunch of information and bringing it to one place to take action on it. When you understand that there are people or AI better in the world at doing that task faster, cheaper, quicker, you start to realize that you're just adding an employee that you're calling AI to do the task to hand work between one human and the next. And when you think of it like that, you're no longer replacing things, you're enhancing your company's speed at producing an output. And the first thing that I look at, because I come from supply chain, so I'm always looking at like push
Oh yeah.
pull.
Yep.
And when you're pulling customers along, you're going to lose them because you're constantly trying to tell them, like, hey, this is what you should do next. This is what you should do next. And by the time they get their hands on the system, they're lost because you pulled them the whole way. They were guided, but they truly didn't know what they're trying to solve for. When you're being pushed from the client and the client's like, yeah, once we solve this workflow, we're going to go down to the next part of the supply, like the next part that this work gets passed to and solve there. They're seeing the whole picture. And if you're in a supply chain of like widgets in a manufacturing plant and you can do 10 widgets per minute on a lathe, and your shipping and your boxers can do 5 widgets per minute boxing, well, you're going to have a big pile up in front of boxing, because as those widgets move through the supply chain, it's just going to pile up. So if a department comes to you and says, yeah, I was just told to solve this with AI, and you solve that, you're just putting work on every other department and they're going to not succeed. And then
Yeah.
the KPI is not going to be hit, not because the AI was bad, but because they can't like physically move the work out of their department to another one because that department hasn't been efficient enough to solve the problem. So that's the difference. Is I'll just simplify it by saying push and pull.
Yeah. Andrew, I don't know if have you ever read the book The Goal?
Oh, it's my favorite book of all time.
Yeah,
I read it once a year.
absolutely. I also worked in the
Yeah.
supply chain space. We were doing, high tech manufacturing. We were doing demand planning, and this is
Yeah.
all without AI. To be able to go in and to be able to, halt the design process. And I worked on the collaboration end of this technology, but
Mhm.
halt a product that's in manufacturing,
Yeah.
change the design of it, understand the impacts of all that. I mean, that's the kind of thing. Again, AI. I mean, it would be completely different solutions
Yeah.
that we would have developed. This was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Built that out. Yeah, this company, I don't know if you're familiar with, called E2Open. They went public and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I was there back at the startup of
Oh
E2Open.
wow.
But
Yeah, the goal is great. The goal's great, and the theory of constraints is such a simple concept, but it's tough to show it in practice unless you've lived through manufacturing, because
right,
everything's so physical there.
yeah,
But I mean, I'm an agency owner, and I've seen my agency operate for the last 15 years now. There's a lot of theory of constraints that happen inside of software companies,
yeah,
and the thing that's happening with engineering right now is engineering is becoming so shortened in their time frame of how it used to be the long pole of getting development out, that I
mhm,
need to enhance the other parts of my business to keep up with engineering. And that's a new paradigm that I think a lot of people are entering that didn't understand the theory of constraints. Is we've just decreased the amount of time it takes to produce code. And that is true across every industry that's developing code right now. It is quicker to put out a product than it's ever been before.
yeah,
But the weight is now falling on marketing to keep up with the materials to advertise the new features.
yeah,
And enterprises are going to take 5 years to increase marketing and decrease engineering, or keep engineering where it is and increase marketing to get better sales. And they're not ready for that. And they're not even seeing the enhancements of what's happening when code takes half the time.
yeah. Well, that's one of the frustrations of it, because I understand that too. But when I read it, when I came across that, during business school in the late '90s,
Mhm.
I was working as a technical project manager. I'm like, this applies to all of the structure of
Mhm.
running and trying to provide the data and reporting and keep everybody on track and all that part of it. It's like a manufacturing process. And then I
Mhm.
literally went into the supply chain world and
Yep.
witnessed a lot of that. Worked with banking, finance clients,
Mhm.
and how much that relates to it. No, but yeah, it's frustrating to see so many of the tech companies doing the layoffs that they're doing, and a lot of these personnel that are in these areas that they're then going to be hurting for those areas in 2-3 years. I just think it's a mistake the way it's always done.
Mhm.
And a lot of the marketing folks, a lot of the operational folks are cut off the top there.
Yeah.
and those are the roles that they're going to struggle then to fill later.
Yeah, it's layoffs are an interesting headline. I've been digging into it recently because I was writing a LinkedIn post. I write every Sunday for my LinkedIn, and I was looking at the layoffs that Microsoft have done. It's
Mhm.
specifically Microsoft, because they're one of the only companies that has been around since the 80s, and they're one of the only companies that have survived the S&P. Like, there's a specific word that's called, like, after 20 years, it's almost impossible to stay on the S&P. That's why the top 20 companies now are all different than they were
Right.
15 years ago.
Yep.
But Microsoft is the only one that has been able to do what they called like a second loop or a second iteration through that.
Mhm.
Uh, and this year, right? So there's two things that's really interesting about layoffs. The first one is layoffs happen all the time, and it depends on the headlines and how they want to phrase it to make people either worried or anticipate the economy. And
Mhm.
so when a certain news publication starts putting out layoffs, they're trying to cater the story in their direction, because layoffs are just a general easing and growing of companies.
Mhm.
Microsoft specifically, though, has achieved an all-time new peak efficiency with revenue per employee. So I think it's 1.08 million for the fiscal year of 2024 of how much revenue each employee produces. And this is like across the board with Facebook, Google, Netflix. All of these companies are achieving more with the number of employees they have. They also have more employees than they've had 5 years
Yeah.
ago.
Right.
So they've increased, while they have laid off, they've increased the number of employees. Now, in the same headline that like Microsoft just touted, I saw that it was like 70,000 people or whatever it was, which is massive. I get it. Like, they have a lot of people. Um, or 7,000, sorry.
7,000. Yeah.
At
Yeah.
the same time, in Nigeria, there was, because of ChatGPT, there was, I think it was like a certain tens of thousands of people are getting the opportunity to get jobs that they've never been able to get before.
Mhm.
And that, at the same time of offering layoffs, you're allowing, with the same technology, if you want to tout it to AI is forcing these layoffs, is enabling someone from another country to get a job that they never were able to get before in the technology space.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting paradigm if you start looking at the economy and the geopolitical stuff of what's happening with AI, because it's just, economies of scale of how much you're paying individuals compared to who in the market is capable of doing those jobs. So if AI is to blame for Microsoft's layoffs, AI is also should get the credit for enabling those jobs in Nigeria.
Yeah. Eh, in the market, with all of the marketing, all of the promotional material out there around I mean, it's pretty noisy out there. It's another frustration. I know that people always ask the question, as a Microsoft MVP and do a lot of community activity. They're like, how do you keep up? How do you cut through all the noise? How do you cut through all the noise? And are there particular kind of hype solutions or technology areas in the AI space that like frustrate you, that it's like I
Yeah.
wish would just go away?
Yeah. The two things that I've started doing that I just advise everyone to do is stop listening to Sam Altman and the CEO of Anthropic, and just people that are trying to increase the profits of their frontier model. And I have nothing against them. If I was in their shoes, I'd probably be saying the same things. Sam Altman's path to success is by being synonymous with AI. And you do that by just touting the market. Every time he says something, it's CNN and Fox News headline news.
Yeah.
And so people are using ChatGPT when Gemini exists on their phone, which is very frustrating to see. But like, you can click a button on the side of your phone and use Gemini, which is 95% as good as ChatGPT.
Yep.
But because of the marketing that Sam Altman is doing, he gets a share of that, right? And you're going to the app. But my point is, they're doing it for their businesses. And so you got to step away from the news that they're producing, because that's how they're making profits, and peel back to the companies that are building AI for 10, 15 years, even 20 years, even 60 years, right? It's been around since a very long time. And there are people that are actually creating like lifetime changing business opportunities for people in enterprise and mid-range markets. And those are the people you want to follow. You want to see those success stories. You want to see how they're doing it, what they're thinking of, what departments they're considering using AI. Because when you install it properly, you can get to the Microsoft levels of revenue per employee higher than you've ever done before. And that should be your North Star metric going forward. Not that employees need to be reduced, but you should be able to take more of the pie of the industry you're in by having agents do jobs that you were never able to do before, therefore increasing sales, increasing marketing, and gathering more revenue for your company.
Yeah.
If you can do that, you should be listening to the people that are successfully pulling that off. and not the noise that's happening around it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Over the last decade, there's been a lot of the use of the phrase digital transformation, and I
Yep.
always, as I talk with clients about this, I always say, like, look, digital transformation. It does not mean go and upgrade whatever systems to the latest technology. You can have digital transformation with your existing technology, but a different approach to it. It's about getting the most out of what you already have. A
Yep.
lot of the way that I look at AI is like to phrase it as like add-on or bolt-on solutions onto those pieces. I think again, it's the wrong way to think about it. There's almost a negative connotation to that idea, but a lot of it is. It's again, I can just hear Deming in my head. Optimize the system, optimize the system. You get to different places. Okay, what else can we do? How can we optimize on top of that?
Yeah.
That's what I think when I think of AI and what it goes and does is you don't have to do everything. You don't have to blanket every system, but you can start going and looking in certain areas and improve those areas and build. And it can be that kind of, I think, almost like the Dave Ramsey, of that rolling, what does he call it? The snowball method
Yeah.
of AI.
Yeah. Yeah. That there is an interesting thing that is happening in industries though that I'm seeing with companies that we're working with that are successfully rolling this out, or competitors in the space, or I go to a conference and I hear this. Every industry has kind of a zero sum gain of the clients that are in that marketplace. So you can go to any, like construction, there's only a certain amount of buildings being built in Boston, right? So
Right.
whoever is winning those bids, somebody is not winning those bids. And as Boston does more construction, more companies will show up. But there is a pie in a given year of who can win the most projects. And two parts of this start happening. The first one is a construction company can reduce their costs by 50% and put out a bid that is 50% less than every other bid they put out in the past and every competitor that they have, and achieve the same outcome that they've had before, because they're reducing the waste inside of project managing the construction process of
Mhm.
putting that building up. Now
Mhm.
they can do that, but they should also be able to reduce the time it takes to put that building up. Now, in that excess time, they should be able to gain another project for the same amount as the first one. Therefore, the reduction of 50% should keep the revenues still at 100% that they've had before. And it doesn't look like they've grown. It doesn't look like they, have more revenue, and maybe the same employees are building both buildings at the same time because there's 50% cost reduction and 50% revenue reduction. So it seems like the company's still just operating at the same amount, but they're sucking in more clients. And as
Mhm.
they do that, the competitors are not able to win or compete at that reduction price that they were able to pull off. And 50% is a dramatic decline, but Harvey AI is pulling this off in the legal space for $500 million companies
Mhm.
that are $2,000 an hour legal, like charging hours that they're reducing to $1,000 an hour. That is happening. And so if you're not capitalizing on that cost reduction, you're going to lose that market quicker than you can imagine. And everything is faster in 2025. So instead of losing it in 10 years, you're going to lose it in 2. And AI is the reason for that, but it's also the people that are understanding that it's a long game, and just capitalizing on cost reductions is a short win. But if I can compound that in department after department after department, and I can start bidding less on the projects that I've been bidding on in the past and win more projects, they'll be the owner in that market, and then they'll be able to set their own price.
Yeah.
So those two things are happening that people aren't paying attention to.
So that's great, which kind of is a good segue into my next question is like what are the misunderstandings or the issues which leaders are um, they're getting wrong, and it's costing them real money.
Yeah. The first one is that, like, there's the phrase that's happening: if you don't start with AI now, you're losing. It's
Right.
not true. Like, if you don't start with digital transformation, you've been losing for the last 10 years. Like, if you're
Yeah.
not moving to the cloud, if you're not allowing your employees to have a computer at home,
I,
if you're forcing them to the office, like,
Andrew, I use the phrase. It's like when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, right now, like
yeah,
now,
exactly.
start. And
Exactly.
of course,
So,
but
yeah.
it's a journey. It's not a race. You're not
Yeah.
like, oh, I didn't start running yesterday, therefore I've already lost. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. But
No, and any of those examples are a good one. Like, if you want to start running, what should you do first? You should research what it takes to be in the shape that you want to be in, figure out a plan of how much you need to run a week to hit that goal, and then put a milestone in place and then start. like hitting that goal, right? So it's not like you need to just jump into ChatGPT and deploy that across your company and say we're AI ready, or just change your website, which is what a lot of agencies do.
Okay. Well,
Um,
that's the like that's reminiscent of the .com era. That's
yeah,
what they did. They literally just said whatever your business is .com. So
yeah.
therefore, hey,
Pets.com.
we're in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. And people are doing that with AI. Like they're just adding it on. AI is a culture. It's a frame of reference, and it is an employee. It is not just the thing you add to your company. It is something that is going to work and live and breathe with the processes of your organization. And so it needs to be trained on your data. It needs to have your knowledge base and understand that your knowledge is separate than the internet. It needs to provide answers in the tone and the context that the company has built over those times, in the same culture and the voice. And that takes time. And if you don't have that, employees are not going to use it. They're just going to look at ChatGPT and be like, shortcut my answers, but give me solutions as opposed to helping me work through this problem in the future.
When you're working with clients, I mean, is there a difference in the AI strategy that you recommend for a profitable, durable business that is like healthy, solid, doing a lot of the right things versus like a venture backed need to scale in that hyper growth model? I mean, is the strategy markedly different between the two?
Yeah, it is, but it's not realized. The client itself doesn't realize that it should be similar. PE backed and venture backed, they're after efficiencies,
Mhm.
and they have a very well trained mind on how efficiencies can help their bottom line in 10 years. And so they're easing into this concept by saying, like, what are the places in your business that we can deploy a model to help so that you can be AI ready for the next phase? They're very patient. They're also very understanding that the CEO has to make changes. And they're
Mhm.
also very understanding of like cost per unit, right? Of how much they're selling compared to how much it takes to produce that product. Venture backed is just out of control. They just throw stuff and hope that it's AI ready. And they say, like, I won't invest in this until it's has an AI association to it. We've had proposals. I get about 5 to 7 a week. We've had proposals where it was a venture backed company, and they're just like, "Hey, the company, my investors told me I need to put a chatbot on the website. Can you build one for $20,000 that's based on this knowledge base?" And that's horrible, right? They just want to achieve this concept that they're AI, that they're using AI. And then enterprise brands, it's almost like the CEO needs to go through a training course to then be in the state of that the PE firms are already in. They need to look at it as long-term benefits, long-term gains, but how can AI assist the team without replacing people? How can it be put in place that it can build a culture around the AI model that everyone's using it and it's part of the team? And that's the part that CEOs are missing. They just say, like, go install something into this department, and they announce it as if it's going to replace employees. Well,
Yeah.
of course no one's going to help you build it. They don't want their job to be replaced, right? So they have no energy to put effort into training it properly. And so I think that's the duality is it's PE firms are doing it right because they've been structured in this format of reducing costs and getting more returns on the investment they already have, and they're very patient and they understand that it's a 10-year road, whereas enterprises just need to practice that instead of the venture backed.
Yeah, it's I know with a lot of any kind of outside investment, whether either whatever the model is, it makes me think of because a lot of where they start, or it seems to have started, the startups that I've worked with is that they're before they look at the other efficiencies. I mean, we weren't talking AI 20 years ago, but it was reducing the headcount for this. How do we get the minimal staff? It's like
Yeah.
you've now just emptied the room, and now we don't have the people to
Yeah.
go and do the strategy that you want us to go and follow.
Yeah. Like Clavio. Remember they fired 700 customer service agents and they started hiring them back?
Yeah. Well, that's hey, look, I in the 2009 era, I mean, I got laid off by Microsoft, and it was 2 weeks that it took before I got a call back and saying, "Hey, would you consider come back and doing a contract?" They cut too deep in some areas, in some of my team members, and two of my contractors went back because they're like, "Hey, I was a contractor anyway," and
Mhm.
got more money.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
but
Yeah, and that happens, but that's what we talked about at the beginning of the episode. Companies are living, breathing organisms, and they have good months and bad quarters, and CEOs have to make decisions and they notice that they cut too deep or they didn't cut far enough. And when you have, I think Microsoft has what, 230,000 employees.
I don't
So
know now, but yeah,
yeah,
something
you got to
crazy.
manage all that, and you have to manage where there's waste. I mean, I have 70 employees, and every once in a while I notice that we have waste. Can't
Yeah.
imagine how much waste is in 228,000 employees, right? There is waste there. And so you have to deal with that, and you have to try to get them all rowing in the right direction. I mean, Microsoft's at what I say, 1.8 million, 1.18 million or something like that of revenue per employee. They're
Yeah.
doing something right with making sure that everyone is producing some revenue generating idea as they go to work every day.
A topic I bring up, kind of the last topic area for you. I know you've got to go, but I talk a lot about governance, and part of it, a lot of AI and building and automating solutions in the Microsoft ecosystem. There's the Power Platform solutions. You have the information management systems like SharePoint, these other systems out there. Is that governance is something security, compliance, governance. A lot of the governance, the review of like, what are we actually building? Did we build it? Did we architect it in the right way?
Yes.
Like, well, again, we're throwing stuff out there where we have people that are doing things. Are we even aware what they're doing, what they're building,
Yes.
how they're spending their time? They usually don't pay attention until something breaks, something
Yep.
goes wrong. There's a data breach, kind of all those different things. Do you provide any guidance to your customers around that, like how to review, how to provide governance so that you continue to be smart about what you're building and how you're extending AI capabilities?
100%. I mean, what sets our agency apart is we build in their systems and then we produce a sometimes 100-page site book, which explains everything we built, how we built it, why we put it in place, how you test it. When we built Consumer Reports project, we handed it over to the team and they had consultants working on every role that we had. And they were full-time employees by the time we ended of training and learning and using this system so that they can take it and use it internally. That is a massive shift of development processes where you hire an outside agency to build something and you just keep them on for a very long time. AI is an employee. You are I always say we are building a rocket ship, we're putting rocket fuel in it, and we're teaching you how to fly it. And every client we've had, we've handed the keys back over to the client. And that means that they've had to use our site books, go through the training, understand the testing mechanisms, and complete those. And there are some teams that don't have engineering, but after the savings, they were able to hire an internal person that can monitor the system we built, and it still saves them more money per year than it was before the system was built.
Yeah.
So data governance is very important, but Microsoft should also learn from their home books that they need to put data governance around their Copilot stuff. Like, it's not what they tout on the internet and what they put in their marketing material is not the same thing as if you're trying to build with it.
I know. That it's yeah. Well, if it was written by AI, it could be hallucinating.
Yeah, I wonder if they did that.
I don't,
I doubt it.
I
There's
don't
been
know.
so many people, but Copilot's a beast, and I get their direction with it. And if they pull it off, it's a massive win for them because people won't even think of ChatGPT in the future because
Yeah.
Copilot will be sitting next to Microsoft PowerPoint and Outlook whenever they're using a computer. So Microsoft has a chance to like completely, on the enterprise level, remove ChatGPT from the lexicon.
Well, I'm biased as a Microsoft MVP, and I work in the ecosystem. I mean, look, but I'm also a realist about what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, there's nothing more painful than, and I've had this experience at multiple companies where we were, say, forced as the employees to deploy something to go and work with clients that we knew was not ready.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to do that, and you have to balance that, get the timing right on that. But I do like your rocket ship idea, because we are all Katy Perry, we are all astronauts or rocket scientists, or
That's the first astronaut you think of.
that's right. That's right. I should get a badge or patch or something now that we're all astronauts of some
Yeah.
kind.
There
So.
you go.
Well, Andrew, really appreciate your time, and of course, I'll have all the contact information out there for people that want to come out and find more about you and your company. I'll have all those links that are out there. So, really appreciate your time.
Great, Christian. This was great. Great episode. Hope people listen to it. Yeah, and I appreciate your time today.
You've been listening to the CollabTalk podcast. New episodes are published weekly, and you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and most other podcast platforms. Thanks for listening.